All right. And now we are with Kevin DeLong. You'll notice that Lynn is no longer in the shot. She had to jump off for another thing. So, Lynn, thanks for jumping on. Now we're moving over to Kevin. Kevin, thanks again for coming on. I know you're super busy, and we're going to talk about why you're super busy here in a second. But how are you doing today? And why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm good, man. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it. Again, like Justin said, I'm Kevin DeLong, the founder of what's the little thing called Cyber Social Hub.
That's right. That's right. And so I remember you. How long has it been since you started? How many years has it been?
Since for Cyber Social Hub? So it's been just over 2 years, but people this year are really starting to, it's, you know how you always hear the snowball effect, right? Mm-hmm. Our snowball was like the little tiny snowflake for a long time. And finally it's gotten to the size where people are starting to see it. So it's just been over 2.5 years now. Man, for the longest time, we just had, a couple hundred members, and hoorah to the core members, been there for the whole time. And thanks for their support. And if without them, we could have never built the community up and, offered the value to the other digital investigators that we have. But yeah, it's grown quite a bit. It's a very cool thing to watch it kind of and the community build it up as we go.
I want you to go into your database. I want to know which number I am when I.
I will let you know. I'll look at it and see.
I was pretty.
What really stinks. You were. We had to actually wipe the database. Like it was 3 months, I think, after we did it, because we had. Obviously, I'm not a developer on the platform. We didn't build it. We contracted the build on it, and the company that we went with the first time literally were in business 3 months, and then they were gone. I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do?
It's not going to happen.
So I was trying to message them to say, hey, how do I get access to your database, which is our members, and pull them out where we can move it over to a new platform? And yeah, no, they were gone.
Oh,
just
wow.
Gone.
Like dead
so,
out of business.
Yeah. Either that or just took money and run. I'm not really sure what happened to them, but yeah, they didn't hang around very long.
Jeez. So we're going to get to Cyber Social Hub. One thing I want to rewind a lot of years, maybe now, but you and I met at the Richfield office at BCI eons ago.
Right on.
And the funny thing is that Rick Warner, who was the supervisor of the cyber department at that time at BCI, which was where I worked, brought you in to demo Mobile Phone Examiners, or Access Data's Mobile Phone Examiner, MPE.
Right.
And then later, Rick told me, he's like, yeah, I wanted to connect you with Kevin because he has this contractor opportunity for a mobile device instructor, because he was trying to get me more money so that I wouldn't leave Ohio, being from Washington State. And then turns out Kevin then recruited me into Access Data, and I left anyway. So that kind of,
we just hired you away completely.
That kind of backfired.
Which is so wrong. Sorry, Rick, if you're watching. Yeah. Sorry, man.
I actually saw Rick a few months ago. I told him that, and he's like, good, or what, anyway, he was totally cool with it. But one thing I'm interested in, and I mean, I know some of it, but you where you started, how did you get like into the forensics industry? What was kind of your path, but also some of your motivations to follow that path?
Right. I was born a geek, so that always helps with that natural curiosity where, granted, I'm a child of the 70s, and, taking apart the 8-track player, not being able to put it back together, those types of things. I always had a natural curiosity really young about all things. And then anything technology, sci-fi, you and I had Star Wars conversations, anything has just always got my interest. And then, it was right after I got out of the Marine Corps was, I got into law enforcement, and they started looking almost immediately for someone to process computers and things like that. And well, I was the guy that could turn that big beige box on. So I was the guy. They say, you're it. You're going to all
right.
of this training. So you understand what a computer is. That's seriously, it's no joke. That's how it started.
It's incredible to me how many people that literally was it. Like, hey, Officer DeLong, I saw him messing with the computer, and he was able to turn it on and turn it off, and no smoke came out. Like, send him in. And I've told this before, but I missed my undergrad graduation because I was signed up to do my PT testing and all that sort of stuff to become a police officer. And I was getting an IT degree and didn't want to do IT. Okay. And it turns out the interesting thing, I went and got a master's and so went that route. But had I continued with the police thing with my CIT degree, 100% I would have ended up in forensics anyway. You know, it would have been a different path, but looking back now, I may not be here, but I would have been doing computer forensics because it would have been the same idea. Oh, Tolman's got this background, send him to the ICAC unit or send him to the whatever. And
yep.
So yeah, you actually though, because they put you in that department, but I think you built up the lab there into a legit forensic lab. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am not known to do things half rear-ended just by my nature. It's either go as hard as you can or go home was always kind of a motto. And we started off, I kid you not, on the second floor of the police department. There was a utility closet. They used to keep papers and, extra ticket books and forms, extra supplies. I took over a little corner of it. And then eventually it expanded out. And I took the whole thing from them. I mean, literally, okay, it was like, for those of you that are really wealthy, a walk-in closet, right? So, I mean, it was decent size. There was enough for remember the old big beige Fred boxes? Yeah. I mean, these monstrosity things. I think the end table that sits next to my couch is smaller than the original Fred unit. And this was what was this, back in 2001? So I've been in digital forensics for a minute. Has it been 20 years? Yeah, it's been over 20 years.
Nice.
Holy crap. See this stuff right here? Yeah, we didn't have any of that stuff when I first started. But so yeah, it started there, and then we started expanding and growing. And I remember one of the first cases we worked, it was a detective had brought was it a StarTAC? I don't remember, one of those flip phones, right?
Yeah.
And they go, hey, it was left at a scene of a warehouse burglary. And he says, what can we get out of this? And I'm like, I don't know.
Let's find out.
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing then, especially, crime, and it's a StarTAC. So you just kind of gathered what we could without changing as very little as we were able to. There was no hookups, and just documented best we could, and went from there. And then, as the cases started coming in, we realized, hey, we need more help. And by help, I mean funding, right? My department was fairly small, and we were looking to outside agencies for assistance. And it's like, okay, so then I built, and I wish I would have had the sticker here. I still have the sticker. It's actually on the metal door leaving my garage to come in the house. It was the Northwest Ohio Technologies Crime Unit was what we came up with. And so we went up as far, so most of Northwest Ohio, we were recruiting people from there to join, and they'd either supply a body to us or funding, and then we would handle their forensics case, extract data from phones. And it just continued to grow from there. I have no idea what state it's in right now, or if it survived. Unfortunately, I have a little bit of contact with it. Actually, I got to go back down here in a week to keep my credentials up, because I still maintain my credentials in Ohio, just in case. You never know.
Just in case.
You never know.
Just in case you need to go back to the road.
Right. So
I
that's kind of what I mean, full force where it went up from there.
No, that's super cool. I know you'd been gone for a while at that point, but so working at BCI, we actually had somebody from your department, a detective, bring in evidence to BCI to work. And I was like, oh, hey, I know Kevin. And they're like, oh, I remember Kevin and blah, 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 blah. So we sat there while they just needed a dump and ship, just, send it on their way type case. So we were just BSing in the break room. But yeah, I mean, the work you did there, like you said, I don't know where it's at now, but it did leave a mark, like people knew that was a thing that was being done at a high level there. And that was kind of cool where you've done it. And then Dan Sumter was also on that same track. And I love seeing these officers that, hey, you got thrown into it, but you grab it and then take it and make it 100. You take it and run with it. And that's, as I go to these conferences, I meet people like you, like Dan, other officers that, hey, I built up this lab around this thing because they get passionate about it, and it's a fun thing. And I think we're going to get to Cyber Social Hub, but that's where that passion kind of led you, I think, is like, let's get everybody together.
Yeah, it was that, like I mentioned early on, it was that part of that natural curiosity thing, right? Of how things work. Remember the 8-track I mentioned? It's no different of how an SMS message is laid down and encoded, just a lot more nerdier at that point, right? It's like, okay, how's this little tape spin around and there's 8 tracks in this little thing? Anyway, just figuring all that stuff out. And that's really what any type of really digital investigation is. It's just, you have to have a curiosity of how it works, how something was laid down or evidence was left, or what possible evidence could be there in any one of these systems that are touched along the way. It's just, to me, I still get nerdy when I'm talking about it, and I don't even work active cases anymore.
I think that's a key difference between one of the things that we're doing right now is we're talking about forensic review and forensic exams. And so you'd have examiners and reviewers. And I think that's a major difference between what an examiner is and what a reviewer is. And examiners, the nerds like us that are like, yeah, that's a text message, but how was it stored? And how do I get that out? And how do I do cool things with that data to paint a story? A reviewer, and they have strengths in other areas. That's their, thing, is like, okay, I just want to look at this stuff, get that data and listen, I don't care. And we need both types, right. But I totally, that's where, when I was at BCI, I really got into SQLite, databases and finding new ones and figuring out how to break it down. Started out in Excel. Like, I think like almost everybody does, like, okay, I got this database. I don't know SQLite. And then started teaching myself SQLite. And then we bought Brandon Sanderson's, SQLite forensic browser at the time. I'm not sure if it's still called the same. I think it is.
I think someone else purchased it. Who purchased
it?
Teal
Tech and them have joined together to help push that excellent tool. And Sanderson, did I say Brandon or Paul?
You said Brandon, but
it's Paul.
It is Paul.
Yes.
I wasn't going to
Brandon Sanderson's an author. Paul is a programmer.
There you go.
But Paul is a cool dude. Like, when I moved to Access Data at this point, Kevin pulled me out, and Kevin's first thing, I get hired, and he's like, I need a SQLite class 3 days long, and I need it in 3 months. Don't talk to me until it's done. Well, maybe it wasn't that hard, but, and was able to build that. But we had forensic browser we got, and working with Paul and communicating, he was super helpful. It was cool. It was cool to work with people that had that passion. And that was one of the cool things. So you eventually left, and we have MFI in kind of between the police and the Access Data, right?
Yeah. So I was doing some contract work, right? And we're actually going to do a series on kind of the migration, or people transitioning over in the multiple ways that you can do that, which there's 1,000 different ways that you can leave police work and get into where something that's actually going to pay you to live. So MFI was my in between. Lee Reber, who's actually over at Oxygen right now, I think. And so Lee was, a mentor in the space, and he got me started in it. I was on their forums for a long time, and just trying to answer questions, asking questions, just getting involved in the community. And Lee noticed it. He says, "Hey, we're hiring for a part-time instructor position." And I'm like, "Oh man, that'd be awesome." But I ask a lot of questions. I don't know that I'd be necessarily great for an instructor position. So he ended up flying me somewhere. I can't remember where it was, DC area. Anyway, I don't remember where it was. And I met some great people there that also got hired in the early MFI days. And that's what we did. I contracted instructing, contracting instructing is a good way to go if you take days off from the full-time gig. At the time, now I have any idea what it pays now. So don't anyone ever get your hopes up. It could have dropped because there's a lot more forensic examiners than there were back in those days. So it was fairly pricey to bring us in, but it was $1,000 a day that we got to make just for hanging out and teaching. So it was awesome. But yeah, that was the in between. I took vacation days, any PTO, any surplus comp days I had, and I'd be traveling somewhere to teach. It was great.
Well, as you know, that's the route I went, not MFI, but contracting for Access Data, and then eventually bounced. Mm-hmm. But that was one of the things that actually made the transition to Access Data cool because I was on your team. You were the head over the mobile instructors. But when I came in, it was not just build this class, the SQLite class, but it was kind of nerd sessions every week where we'd get in and talk about mobile stuff that we'd found that wasn't even related to necessarily a class. I mean, we'd work it into a class because it's cool and we thought it was cool. I think that was one of the things that drew me in as well. Once I'd made that jump was, okay, this is not just like, okay, write this class because this is our job. We're going to write this class because we think this tech is cool. And how can we pass this cool stuff on to somebody else that hopefully finds it just as cool? And I really felt that those are the team.
Fun days. Cause it was just like, imagine, in my day, it was like, I don't know. It was like, I don't know what to compare it to. It's like nerd club of some type, like a chess club, maybe. That's all we do is we were just passionate about finding artifacts or something new that we had discovered. Yeah. It was good times.
Now it's like, hey, I found this cool thing, this SQLite query I wrote. And everybody's like, okay. And you're like, well, come on, man, this is awesome. I got to go to like conferences now to get around you or Rob Atto or whatever to really get those nerd stuff flowing again. To like when you like go to you or Rob or anybody out there at like Techno and you're like, hey, I wrote this script, and they're like, you got to show me, or yes, that's like, check out this one I wrote. It's good times.
What does it do?
Yeah, what does it
do?
Yeah,
and you picked up. If I remember right, you picked up a lot of Python skills too over the years, which is phenomenal. I'm a huge Python person. I write horrible code, but I try my best.
It's fun.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it should be required in forensics. Absolutely, a requirement. If not Python, man, I don't know. What else would you say that people need? If not Python?
I think Python is quickly becoming, if not already become, the language of forensics if you're going to code. Yeah. And you're not coding like an application, you're just coding solutions. Because of the non-forensic support for it, you can find, how to create a file, Google, and it's just, even to the most complex stuff. And all the big tools out there, at least the ones off the top of my head I can think of, have some sort of Python integration to where, okay, I've written a script, I'm going to run it against my stuff. And so it's just so useful. And I know obviously Xterra, big box software, but you can't rely on their development cycles. I mean, you can for the normal stuff, but like, hey, I've got a case right now that needs X. Well, okay, I agree you need X, but our product team's going to have to, with everything, okay, we'll get it to you in 6 months. And you're like, no. Like, I need it now. So if you can solve your own problems with Python or with SQLite or whatever, you're going to be that much. And then of course, once the big box releases the feature that can make it a one-click solve, sure. But yeah, that's always what I loved about knowing Python, or what I know of Python, and knowing SQLite, is I can solve my problems now and wait for everybody else to catch up when development cycles and business cycles, fit into that. So
yeah, you need to, and that's what I learned, because I know a little bit about development teams, and maybe a little bit about the development teams that were there. Is it just takes a long time, and I guess not really a horrible long time, but they really have to think through the process of, okay, hey, what's the best way to go after this artifact, to process it forensically, because developers aren't necessarily always forensic guys. Right. So they have to really stop and think, and they do ask a lot of questions of, okay, what's the best way to do this? How do we parse this? How do they want this displayed? And people don't always consider that. They just think, oh, we just need this feature yesterday and it's not in here. But that's where Python comes in, is that. So, don't go too hard on development guys. They're doing their best and cranking through there, because I did oversee a team of those folks, and great people. Just they want to make sure they do it the right way. And that's one thing I thought always was pretty awesome.
I think, building on what your comment exactly, they also have to build like the most good for the most people, which may not be you, right? Because I need my paycheck, so I need the software to sell to people. But I know also, as a user, I may have a specific application that I need to do, but they're like, yeah, but that's not gonna, we put in this X amount of development, that's not gonna move the software X. So, and that's something we all balance with our time management. But that's where, again, can you solve your own problem? Then perfect. It doesn't matter if it only solves your problem. That's exactly what you need. And that's what's cool about it. And I don't, again, coming back to it, it's just fun for whatever reason. Like I built that, like, and it becomes your baby. I know you've done a lot of open source intelligence with Twitter stuff. And it's like, you start to look at that as like, this is my baby. This is my thing, that I built, and it's cool, and everybody should see it, which everybody should see your script.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I actually changed it this year, trying to make it easier, because, a lot of and it's just there's so many examiners out there nowadays, right? Not when back in the day when we were actually doing it, there was, I don't know, it just seemed like there was a lot less of forensic examiners. And now it's the market's being flooded, not because of it's just being flooded. There's a need for it, for sure. But I notice a lot of the newer examiners kind of like hey, just give me the response type. And, we had names for those types, but, everyone has to start somewhere. So I don't like to say anything. You have to push a button to get an answer, right? But the key to that is, hey, understanding, okay, when you did that, this is the information it's getting. And so you can go back and grab that stuff. So, there's just an evolution to it all. And again, like I said, a lot of the newer examiners necessarily are intimidated by Python, because, I mean, it's way beyond digging down in an artifact. You're actually telling it, not only do you have to know how the artifact's constructed, but you're telling Python how to go and deconstruct that or parse it in a way that's user friendly. So I'm like, all right, I need to make something easier, because all mine was just straight command line driven, and I'd give talks, and there'd be a lot of people in the room at a conference when I'd give a talk, because everyone loved it. I think they really loved the word free that I always put in the title, right? That's what really draws law enforcement in.
For sure.
And then they see the tool and they're like, oh man, I'll never be able to do this. So now what I've done with the tool is it's all option menu driven. It's still a Linux looking script, and you just say, hey, do you want what service do you want to pull from? Right now, we're only doing Twitter. So Twitter, you can push that. And then it says, okay, what type of data and information do you want to pull? Do you want to pull the profile? Do you want to pull friends, followers, all the images, videos, history? You want to watch a geo area? I mean, it's Yeah. So I'm trying to make it easy as possible where they just have to know the information without having to know the command lines behind that. And then, of course, we put it all into a SQL database now, which makes things a heck of a lot easier. Case is really portable, large, but portable.
Right. And if you know SQLite, then you can play with that too. Start building analytics.
Exactly. Just do queries all day long. And that's, I do like throwing it into a SQL database because almost every tool on the planet can do some type of analytics against a SQL database. Literally almost everything.
Yeah. And that's actually the part of SQL that I really like. Is it's not just the raw dump of the data. I like building the story that the data is telling, writing queries that will format the data to be like, oh, hey, these are the trends. These are what's happening. That to me is what's fun, is when you start to build pictures based on that data. And SQLite, super powerful and super, super handy for doing that. All right. So I want to know, Cyber Social Hub, where was the genesis? What was the motivation? Like, who wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm going to build a social network today? Like what was
no one in their right mind does.
Yeah.
No one. Well, I love conferences. The fact that I get to see so many people and learn so many new things. And, somebody's got a great idea. I'll go sit in that class or session and watch and see what they've built and they've artifact that they've parsed and come across, and then you stand up there in front trying to talk to them, hopefully before they get kicked out and the next speaker has to come in. And you do this a million times throughout a 2 or 3 day event. And then after that's over, everybody's gone. It's like, all right, I didn't get to talk to half of the people I wanted to talk to. I'd say 2/3. And so I was like, how can we do this after essentially the event is over? I think that was our tagline for a little while, was how do you stay in touch with these folks? So we just built essentially it, I didn't have obviously millions of dollars to dump into this thing, or even thousands of dollars at the time I started building it. So I just looked at the existing networks that were there. I'm like, all right, how are they doing this? How are they getting a good user experience without, because you get the weirdos in there occasionally too. We still get them in there. I think you and I were talking just pre-show a little bit about someone in there. Yeah. It is what it is, but that's really was the driving force behind it. It's like, okay, let's get just everyone from all of the shows to come into one place and just share ideas with one another. And, somebody will have some awesome research and hopefully they'll share it with the group. And then someone else can learn. And it was just a help everyone else out, because I remember, back in the early 2000s sitting in the lab there in Ohio going, all right, I have no idea how to parse this and deal with this case. Who in the world do I talk to? Luckily, there were some few people around the state that I knew, and I could try to reach out to them and get some answers. But and that's really what it was built for, was kind of the collective of information. So that's how Cyber Social Hub was born. And I think the name of all places was, I couldn't think of a cool name. I'm like, what am I going to call this thing? The Nerd Hangout? What is it going to be? And I was looking at, of one of the shows I wanted to go to. It was the exhibitor floor plan. And it was a massive show. I mean, huge show. And I was like, man, I really want to go to this show. And they had a bar actually set up in the middle of it. And it was just called The Hub. And I was like, that's a cool name for a bar for nerds. I like it. So, and then I just added Cyber Social onto it. And that's how the name was born as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it came up there. And, we had to go through the pains of deconstructing the platform and starting again. Yeah. Granted, we only had I think it was under 70 members at that point. So it wasn't horrific to do it, but then you got to reach out to those 70 and go, hey, by the way, can we get you to put your information back in this database?
Yeah.
Because we've destroyed the other one, and it's gone. And that's because we have a mailing list that we maintain as well. And so we had all 70 people saying, hey, please come back.
Yeah, for sure. It's always, you start to get that momentum, and it's probably a small panic when all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like we got to rebuild. Even if it's small momentum, it's still momentum.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was that bit of panic. But it's evolved like so much over the last 2 years, because I remember when it started, it was a social hub, right? You could post and stuff. But now, is it weekly? About weekly, you have some sort of live stream. You have various guests on there. Plus there's other like just recordings and webinars and stuff that happen. I mean, you guys have a lot of diverse content going on it now.
Yeah. And that's probably the hardest thing to keep up on, is getting content to keep, because there's so many. We didn't want to restrict it to just digital forensics, even though that's where it originally started. We're like, okay, hey, let's kind of bring in maybe some cybersecurity folks, because, there's a lot of crossover, and we haven't really cracked that crowd yet. But we have brought in what we've rebranded to, instead of digital forensics, it's just digital investigations, because, there's a lot behind just more than digital forensics. Because I don't know about you, but in my lab, if somebody was doing something shady online, I had to go and investigate that too. And little did I know that it was called OSINT at the time. Who knew that was a name? We just called looking stuff up at that point, right?
Right.
But then they came up with this awesome, cool name with open source intelligence. I'm like, ooh, I like that. So we have a little bit of that, but there's some other groups doing, like I just went to Osmosis Con this year, and I'll tell you what, Cynthia Hetherington and her group with OSINT stuff, holy moly, they are phenomenal. And anyone who really wants to get in, that's where we push them. We give the technical side of OSINT. Like, there's a lot of Python software. People don't know how to set up proxies if they're going to go do investigations online. We try to, hey, here's how to set up proxy servers. We'll teach you the nerd part of OSINT and let the real investigative side over there. But yeah, I mean, it's really evolved to, I think we're at, as of today, was about 2,600 members. And then people that signed up for our mailing list, we're at, I think we're just crossed over 15,000 examiners that are staying in touch with, they want our information. Why they haven't committed to come in and see the conversations. I think people are still, skeptical of the whole online thing, but, and it's one thing, obviously with law enforcement background, I've committed, and I committed early. We will never, ever give away or sell your information that you signed up with. It's just not going to happen. Now, here's my disclaimer. I always kind of make in jest. If someone comes and offers me $2 million to buy the thing, I'll be like, hey, sorry, I'm selling technically the whole thing to someone, right? There you go. But no, I'm having too much fun doing it. So yeah, I mean, information safe, and we've grown so much. And like you said, we do a weekly hubcast, which I think you've been on that before. Mm-hmm. I know you've been on some webinars that we've done for sure, man. And now I got to get you back on a hubcast to have some fun chats and stuff. Let's see what shenanigans that we should just call it, the shenanigans or something, that episode.
There you go.
And because I know that's your word. Shenanigans is a Justin word. Whenever I hear that word, I think of Justin, because that's his word. And yeah, I mean, we have articles that independent researchers will post up there. We try to keep a reference of a lot of things going on in the industry. If we hear of a cool conference coming up, we put it in the events section. Any open source tools, or just a tool section in general. Now, there's some other great websites that keep track of tools and training, and we're not trying to take over what they're doing. But again, we just want to be a good resource to really give back to the community. That's the end goal.
And I think, coming back to what you said, you're in this, you get in, you have this artifact, you don't know what it is. Where do you go? And now, like you said, the industry has changed so much, even since I was in it, but doing active investigations. But it's nice to have a place where you can go in and bounce legit questions off of. And there's 2,600 people in there that with their powers combined, can probably work something out there. And I tune in to the live streams as much as I can, and they're always so cool because they're just, whether it's a new tool, a new piece of hardware, a new process, a new way of looking at things, it just shows how quickly the industry changes, and you kind of get this live, this up to date. Hey, this is something new. This is a problem, because everybody's going to see, I think, a new problem, or going to see an old problem under a new lens. And I think Cyber Social Hub is really presenting that, forward in an easy to digest manner, and that's what's cool about it.
And I appreciate that.
So
yeah, it's a lot of fun. I always kind of call the show the late night, the really bad late night talk show host we do in the middle of the day, for the long descriptive title of what it is. And because, the format's just that we just have fun. And if, somebody wants to say something crazy or has a funny story to tell about somebody else, by all means, please do it. Because, and that's what people have this stigma about digital forensics, that we're all nerds and pencil protectors. I've never owned a pencil protector in my life. So, all right, there we go. So, maybe you can call us Star Wars and Lord of the Rings nerds, because I know you're a fan also of both. That's fine. We'll take that, because for you, I wore my Red Squadron
nice
shirt today. So, but yeah, I mean, it's again, just to kind of bring that human side to digital investigations, and to let people realize that, hey, everyone has issues. Everyone has problems digging through this stuff. Just stay with it. There's an answer out there somewhere. And heck, if nobody has the answer, you're in a good position to write a really great research paper at that point, to figure it out at that point.
What I think is a good indication of the success of the live streams is when you jump on you host them through YouTube, or at least you pump them through YouTube. And there's actually like a chat that happens in the comments. There's questions, and that's usually the hardest thing I find with any sort of live or recorded media, whatever, is getting that engagement. And it's always fun talking with the other people watching. Even in the chat, you're like, oh, that's a way to do that. Or it's shenanigans, to use my word there.
Oh yeah.
And jokes and a lot of fun stuff. So I think that's one of my favorite parts, is always getting in and having the chat up, which is kind of a funny thing. YouTube and having the chat up usually doesn't go well together, but I find it fun. And
there's a lot of heckling that goes on too, if somebody knows someone else. And man, if we find something else out about you that we can just, it's a fun, if you find that little chink in the armor, we just poke at it. So yeah, if you're soft skinned, don't ever come on the show. I don't want to make anyone cry.
No. Well, speaking of coming on the show, so that was one thing. If we rewind, was it Myrtle Beach the first time you'd set up your podcast set up at Techno?
Yeah, that was our first event that we've done, which was awesome. And I've been trying to get them to do it for a few years before that. A lot of it was in jest, because I didn't know how in the world we'd ever do that. And then one year, Jennifer and Allison, two awesome people, if you've never been to Techno, they're our contact people for the shows, and they're just the best people ever. And she said, "All right, hey, we're just going to do it. Just come down. We'll do it. We'll set you up in the reception area, and just bring what you need." I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "How big of an area I'm going to need?" I said, "There's a lot of equipment. We have these cameras, and we have microphones, and then lighting systems and everything else." And she goes, "Yeah, well, plenty of room. Come on down and just do your broadcast." So we did it just this past spring, which was in was it April, May? It was May of 2022 was our first one, and man, that was so much fun. We would literally just go and snatch people up and have conversations right live at the show. Our people are walking by, so everything could have gone wrong, depending on someone's mood. But no, it went really well, and that was a lot of fun to do, because you got to, because as you mentioned, we try to grab all the latest trends, and if we'd see a good talk or something interesting going on, I'd go try to grab that person. I got told no a lot of times at the show, right? Because not a lot of people don't have any idea still who Cyber Social Hub is, and they're going, yeah, no, I'm not going to go on some crazy podcast with you. But no, we had a lot of fun people on.
No, I liked because I sat down with you for one of the mornings, and it added a different environment, because there was the people walking by and they'd yell at you. And so then there was a couple times with me and with some of your other guests where you're kind of talking to people and they're like, oh, they're yelling at us or something. It kind of added a really cool thing, while still, like you said, it's so cool because you've got vendors that are presenting their new stuff. You've got the open source and tech enthusiasts presenting their newest research and stuff. So you can just grab and pull them in and kind of present that, at least a part of it, to those that couldn't make it to the conference. Definitely not a replacement for the conference.
No.
Like you said, Jennifer nails the conferences. Just got back from San Diego a little bit ago. Techno
San Diego, yeah.
And you guys were there. And you had your own. You had your own booth. You had your own section.
They were brave enough now that realized, okay, these guys are safe. They're okay to come and do a broadcast. And they put us in the showroom with everyone else, with every other vendor. We were jammed in there with everyone. I think you guys were a row or so over.
Yeah.
And man, that was fun. You guys did one of these from there too, right?
Yeah, we recorded
you did a show. Because I walked by, I went up to talk to you, and it took my brain for some reason like a second to realize that, oh, he's recording. I don't want to come up and say something that's inappropriate for being on the air, which I'm known to do occasionally.
Oh yeah, no, it was funny. I was talking to Lynn, and then I tell her every time, I'm like, I can't hang out with Kevin, because every time I come back from hanging out with Kevin, I'm writing an email to my boss about I need more gear and this update and whatever. And I have podcast gear envy. Every time we connect, your setup's so slick. Mine's getting there. But
yours is pretty sweet. Sweet.
It's just, but every time I see yours, I'm like, okay, we need new mics. We need.
And I got to do a shout out again to Lynn, who was in intro, and she was one of my favorite people at Access Data. She was there when I worked there too, so I had a chance to meet her a few times prior to here. But yeah, she's awesome. So Lynn's awesome. So yeah, she's not the one that buys your equipment though, right?
What was that?
Because is she the one that buys your equipment?
Nope.
All right. Well, I'm trying to butter her up for that. So I get her. No, I still mean that. Lynn's one of my favorite people ever.
She helps me beg for it, so it's good to have her still on the team. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about is, what are some of the things, just kind of the trends that you're seeing? Because again, your whole kind of thing right now is having your finger on the pulse of the forensic industry. So what are some of the things that you're seeing in trends, the way you think the forensic industry, technology, workflows, et cetera, are going?
Yeah. And well, we've always kind of compared forensics to like this tree, kind of like the family tree, essentially, where you have the term forensics as the main trunk coming up, and then the offshoots of mobile, cloud, which grew out, it's a little bit of a smaller branches, and then you get network forensics, and then you get the standard dead box, and then live, and then all of this other stuff. There's so many branches. This tree, if it was real, it's got to be the ugliest tree ever, just the way it's formed and the way it looks. But really what we're seeing now in the industry, and it might be just my own unique perspective of it as well, is kind of emerging between the intelligence folks or the information folks. And again, the term OSINT is, you get those folks over there, and then you get the forensics guys over here, because in forensics, you find artifacts and you find proof of something that exists in data, right? But then making sense of that data and bringing it over to a real world type scenario, you're really pulling out pieces of intelligence, whether you're doing it for law enforcement or whether you're doing it in the private sector. You're making that first stand to build that case when you're finding this information. And that's flowing over to the people that are building that bigger picture of maybe something that you're not involved in. Maybe there's a more of a social thing going on, or, some other information that is looking for to help put together that bigger piece. So I see OSINT as probably the skyrocket right now, as large as it's becoming and as fast as it's growing, which is really surprising to me, and how closely the two fields relate, because they could definitely use the information that we come up with out of a hard drive or a phone, or network, wherever it is. And we can definitely use the information they locate out on the internet, in libraries, historical records, property records, to help just build that solid case with digital information. Because OSINT is a little bit more than digital, as you know, that they go off, everything else, but a lot of it is digital tech. I would say, and I'm guessing here, but I'm going to say like 80% of it's digital related, and there's a small 20% that's not. And that's really where I see it hitting. You're going to see the latest this or that, and from various folks, and it probably is within a certain space. But again, our perspective, from what we're seeing, is that merging of those two disciplines to get that bigger picture of what happened, right? Putting all the facts together. I know that's kind of a weird answer, and I don't know that too many people are talking about that right now. So I got to say first, there we go. But anyway, that's really, I think, where we're getting down to, especially with, you look at the climate, again, no politics, but just look in the climate of the political stuff. There's data, right? Now, I'm not saying whether voting machines were right, wrong. I don't want any opinion on it, but there was data there, and then there was opinion, and then there was other facts. And if you look at just those situations, right, and you take the raw data and you take the other information that people were searching for, it's essentially an OSINT and a forensic grab that are coming together to help put that bigger picture in. And we're going to see it on a large scale. We're already seeing it in Ukraine, right? People collecting data. And it's forensic data out there through social media grabs, reviewing a suspect's box, phone, and they're correlating that with things that are happening on the ground. So with live scenes and things like that. So I know one company's come up with a way that they were determining, troop movements based off of images from cell phones, which they had to get the image from cell phones. Plus they put them together with some OCR and tracking capabilities and geolocation, and boom, they could put troop movements together. So I know on the local law enforcement, that doesn't mean diddly to them. They don't care. But now start thinking, incidents in parks, right? That may be unrest there. You might need to put some intelligence together based off of some physical stuff that you found. So anyway, I won't rant on about it, but that's really where I see it launching fast and furious in the next few years, is the merging of those disciplines. And I'm seeing a lot of course, AI has been in our talks and our circles for a long time. People always say, hey, AI in forensics has no place. If you watch movies like, I think the movie was called AI, and there was one called, what was that one called? The robot named Ava, machine. What was it called?
I think it's not Terminator, is it?
No, that's another one that scares me to death. Right? I'm scared of my toaster killing me in my sleep. All one has to do is talk to the named voice assistant. I don't want to say it because there may be one in the room here that I don't want to set her off, and realize how stupid AI can be. But it does a really good job in other things. And the areas that we're seeing too are deep fakes. There was a session at this last conference I was at on deep fakes, and it was showing the merging of technologies and how some digital forensic software is able to detect on whether something's a fake or not, and the misinformation that that's saying. So there was like videos of Obama, Putin. I learned, I didn't know this. There's a whole channel on Instagram that's dedicated to a fake Tom Cruise. Did you know this? He is generated fake Tom Cruise, and man, it looks real. I would have looked and gone, really? He just said that? And it's like, it's completely fake. But there was some high level former CIA and intelligence folks at this last conference talking about the merges of those two pieces of information. And again, that's the whole forensic and intelligence coming together, and it's going to be fun. It's really interesting to see. And they're using AI to kind of help on two fronts. They're using it to create that technology. And then the second one is using it to detect that type as well. I posted a cool video on deepfakes in Cyber Social Hub. It's in the main thread.
Yep.
If you get a chance, watch it. It will scare the crap out of you for generations to come. So there you go. So anyway, there's where I see it going.
That is so cool. So first off, on the deepfakes, I stumbled across a video where they've deepfaked Gandalf, Elrond, and Boromir, and they do reviews of all the Rings of Power episodes. It's hilarious.
You have to send me that link.
I'll send you a link. It's
please do.
It's classic. Okay, so but one of the things that I love about the trends that you're seeing is that they mirror the trends of society. Like, I think more so than ever, our physical lives and our digital lives are meshing. And I know that the internet's been around for a long time and cloud has been around, but it's truly becoming a mesh now. To your point where, like, I want to go to a place, you use digital maps, you store all your data in a cloud. We communicate here in that, and we sync our health information, and all this sort of stuff, this open source stuff with the social media. And I was just watching a thing, to your point, where it was a Russian training video. And these guys were like, where was this? Where they're recruiting prisoners or whatever. And where was they? And they were able to isolate what prison and what courtyard it was in based on the background. So much of our life is videotaped, audio recorded, stored in line, that the division there. So I totally see where the forensics industry is now moving that same. It's no longer separate because our lives are no longer separate. They've got to come together. They've got to mesh.
Right.
And we're seeing that as a demand from our Internet Crimes Against Children units as well. They have cyber tips that come from the cloud that says, hey, we think we found this thing. And then they've got to go out to a home, a business, whatever, and look for that thing. And right now they're kind of very separate things. I see this, and we're trying to mesh those together so that it's like open source sort of from social media. And then here. Have you talked to Semantics 21 before? The company out of Canada?
I happen to have a business card from them. I'm going to hide their name here. Right there it is.
Yeah. So their company is AI. I sat down with him. I recorded an episode with him, and he talks heavily about the application of AI in forensics. I think you should get a hold of him. Cool dude. And talks about where AI is good and for forensics and what it does not do. And it's a really cool thing. And so, yeah, AI absolutely has a place in our investigations. It's totally cool.
Because he showed me that platform and I was blown away. I was like, I got to get you on one of the shows because I'm like nerded out completely. And yeah, it was, yeah, you guys got to check it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't even speak on it. It's so up there and advanced. It's just, it amazed me. It blew me away. But like, have you ever seen the series? I think it's on HBO though, called Westworld.
I know what it is.
So I'm in season 3. It's a little slow, but the other season is about AI, essentially robots, right? Mm-hmm. And then I won't do too many spoilers here, but eventually what they tried to do is it's a form of data and real world consequences that's coming together. And again, it's just AI wanting to take over the world essentially.
Right.
But every show, that should tell us something as a society. Has they ever showed a show that's like AI is the solving all of our problems? No, all of it ends with the world getting wiped out. I mean, look at the Matrix. We'll be living in bubbles and with metal tubes in us and serving the master overlord. Anyway.
For sure. So Kevin, thanks again. I want to know one last thing. Are you
sure?
How's Andor for you? You've been watching it.
You know what? It is so different from the rest of the Star Wars world that I actually kind of like it. It's a lot of character building. So if people are used to, and they watch, say you're a person that just watches Star Wars for lightsabers and people getting shot at, maybe Andor's not for you. But there's a lot of character building, and this is pre New Hope. Yeah. And man, I'm into it. Is it a little slow sometimes even for me? Yeah, but they're doing some really good character building. What's your thoughts on it?
That's my thing. I have never been so pulled in by character development in a Star Wars media as I have in Andor. Like you said, it's way slower, and that takes some adjustment. But once you're in it, you want like I think the new episode's out today. Like it's like, okay, I got to get the wife. We got to go watch the new one because you just want to know where it's going. So
yeah, I know my staff's already watched it, and I said, nope, no talking about it. They get up like early before work even starts to watch it. I'm like, nope.
Yeah,
don't ruin it for me.
Don't ruin it.
Yeah, no, I'll be watching that one later on.
Cool. Well, Kevin, thanks again. Cyber Social Hub. If you're listening to this and you're not signed up, you need to go sign up. There's a lot of good discussions there.
It's free
on a bunch of other stuff. It's totally free. Yep. And the content comes out that Kevin and guests generate weekly, if not, depending on what's going on, more than weekly. And so a lot of good stuff there. Kevin.
Awesome. Justin, thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. And now it's your turn to be the victim. So we'll get you on one of our hubcasts. You'll see Justin on that weekly content.
All right, cool. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, thank you.